After living here a couple of years, constantly rotating our horses' feeding areas to prevent tearing up the ground was getting pretty challenging. We typically go about 6 months with absolutely no rain, which means our horses depend on hay. Without moving the feeders, the ground would either become a dusty pit in the summer or a muddy mess in the winter. With limited pasture space, we wanted to reduce those sacrificial areas while also simplifying feeding by creating designated spots that were protected. Since we rent, we also needed something that would move easily and could be taken with us if we leave. That's how we found the perfect solution: mud grids. These are mud grids from Equinox for horses, and they are super versatile. You can use them for arena bases, wash racks, driveways, walkways, or like us, for pasture feeding stations. They were incredibly easy to install and later to rearrange. The grids create a firm, stable surface that protects the ground from erosion and mud. For us, dust is the bigger issue, but having these grids has also meant that the horses can go back out much sooner after a storm because the footing stays safe. Since we rent, we didn't want to invest a lot in ground prep. Our area was fairly level to begin with, so we just raked it before laying these grids down. If we had fully leveled the area, it probably would have looked even nicer, but this setup has been working just fine for over a year now. Each grid weighs about 50 pounds, so I can move one on my own, but it is easier with two people just because of the size. And compared to stall mats, these are a dream. They're so much easier to move. Stall mats are so heavy, floppy, and always shift around, while the grids are more rigid and stay put. Our first design was kind of a figure 8 shape in the area we had already been feeding. We wanted to see if the grids would actually protect the ground through both summer heat and winter storms, and I'd call that experiment a success. That summer we had heat waves up to 118 degrees, and I was curious if the grids would get too hot. I went out and touched them, and they were no hotter than the dirt surrounding them, and the horses actually chose to stand on them quite often, even when they weren't eating. When spring came, we saw how happy the ground was under the grids, as plants were growing back through them on ground that was previously too compacted for growth. Having one designated feeding zone also meant that the rest of the pasture stayed healthier and safer, especially during rainy months when the bare dirt gets very slick here. The surface of the grids provides firm footing year-round, which is great for hoof health too. And fun side note, the aisle that they created for us even became the spot where my husband and I got married last spring, right in the pasture with the horses standing by our side. Once summer rolled around again, we really appreciated the dust-free feeding station, so we decided to expand by relocating our grids. We worried that the weeds growing through the grids would make them hard to move, but it turned out to be really easy. The way they lock together is simple but solid. They don't shift around, but they also do come apart really easily when you need them to. Now we have 3 separate feeding stations with mud grids, and they're all holding up great. Cleaning them is pretty easy too. Usually I just use a broom and a leaf blower, but manure can be trickier. Fortunately, our horses don't poop on them very often, but if they do, you can use a shovel and a broom if it's hard to get off with a fork, and it's not that big of a deal. The other thing is that the grids are more expensive per square foot than stall mats, but to me, they are absolutely worth it. Since stall mats slide and overlap each other, they constantly need adjusting, and the grids stay in place right where you put them, and the surface is more comfortable for the horses too. And you can even use them upside down and fill them with sand or gravel, which works better for areas where horses are going to be traveling fast, like in a walker or arena base. We use a couple that way and a gateway, and they've been working perfectly there. For us, these grids solved both the mud and dust problems. They keep my horses comfortable and are way easier to manage than stall mats. We do still use stall mats since we already have them, but honestly, I just want mud grids everywhere now. If you want to check them out, I'll leave a link in the description. Equinox has been great to work with so far, and buying in pallets gives you lots of coverage. We use just 2 pallets for everything that you've seen us do here. And whether you want a small walkway or a big feeding area, these grids are so customizable. I've seen people use them for driveways and wash racks too. And overall, we just love them, and we'll definitely keep expanding our collection to give the horses more mud and dust free zones.